Hello and welcome to Movement Building from Home, Week 4. I'm Chad from Mozilla, one of your co-hosts, joined here by Abby. And we are convening these calls in response to the COVID-19 crisis so that we can help bring people together for peer-to-peer learning about sustaining our activism and movement building work in these uncertain times. Our calls have focused on running online meetings in Week 1, practicing online community care in Week 2, practicing personal ecology or self-care, well-being in Week 3. And here in Week 4, we'll be talking about community management. I am so thankful to be here with you. Thank you for joining this call and these series. I'm also going to take us through our community participation guidelines reminder very quickly. We, of course, are here to be respectful, honest, inclusive, accommodating, appreciative, and open to learning from everyone else. And we do not attack, demean, disrupt, harass, or threaten others, or encourage any such behavior. If you'd like to see the full Mozilla Community Participation Guidelines, you can do so right about halfway down page 2 at line 65 in the notes. And if you have an issue to report or something CPG related to discuss, you can reach out to Abby or me. But now to get on to online community management, Abby's going to share with us the goals of today's call.
Awesome, thanks, Chad. So today we're going to learn a little bit about crisis communication for messaging during this time. Most of this will be on the Mountain of Engagement. It's a framework to sort of think about pathways in your communities, and we'll learn about strategies and platforms for adapting in-person community management practices for online participation. And we do have a special guest today, Francesca. If you can wave, talk to us a little bit about that later. But first, we're going to do some silent documenting with Chad.
Cool. Yes, we want to begin as usual from your own perspectives, your own experiences with your communities. And so we'll be doing our usual bit of community and experience sharing. We're going to begin with silent documenting for about 5 minutes, where you'll share your initial thoughts, +1, the powerful things that others say that really connect with you, and ask those kind questions that help people kind of unpack and explain themselves further. We have 3 prompts today. You can jump around, you can do what you like. There's no pressure to answer everything. The first is, think of an online space where you felt welcomed. Share a little bit about what made it so welcoming and what helped you stay engaged with that space. The second prompt asks, how are you onboarding new members right now? Or how are you deepening community engagement with existing community members right now? Like, what's working? And then the last question is, what's that biggest community management challenge you face right now? And how are you thinking about it, or how are you approaching it? Are there any questions about those prompts? All right, we're towards the bottom of page 2, top of page 3. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes, and I'll check in with you in just a few. But please go ahead and share your thinking, type it in there. If you'd rather, you can share out loud and we'll take notes. about halfway through. There's still some new items coming in. If you haven't yet, now's a great chance, if you've kind of finished sharing, to go through and +1 things that really resonate with you and ask any questions that you have. Check in again in just a few minutes, or when the typing really kind of slows down again. All right, things are slowing down, but I certainly encourage you to finish up your thoughts and your +1s and your questions here. First off, is there anything any of you would like to, surface or talk about or discuss out loud that came up for you and that, really spoke to you, or really, sparked a question in your mind? I do like that the comment about having calls where we can all participate non-verbally together as well. Got a lot of +1s. certainly really a rich form of engagement here. Description of blogging is old school. That makes me feel a certain age. That's good. Someone shared there are a couple here that have gotten a lot of +1s in the first section, right in the middle. One about multiple channels and opportunities for asking questions, right? Not feeling dumb for being new, including one-to-one outreach. That kind of attention is great. Came up on another call as a kind of like mentorship. Is there anything anybody wants to share further there or unpack about what that outreach was like?
Yeah, I mean, so I put that initial comment in. I guess one of the challenges with this idea of having a one-on-one connection when someone joins a community is just bandwidth. I mean, there are weeks in my community where we have, like this week, I added like 35 people in one day, and so it's impossible to really consider having some kind of touch in. But I did see, I think Chad, maybe you said somewhere about having like a further down this biweekly newcomer welcome message idea was a really a cool way to approach that. I'm going to steal that.
Awesome. Storytellers United. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and related to that, I think Nicole also put in Donut, which is something Chad and I have used within Mozilla too. But it will randomly match people one-on-one within the community. You get a little newcomer buddy. Yeah.
And that, Abby, that's like that's automated. That's a service, right? Like a bot.
Yeah, it's a bot. I think you do have to pay for it if you have a big enough community, but you could also try to do something hacked together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Make a buddy. Go talk to them.
There's another comment right underneath that about discovering a few key people. that they kind of like get closer to and keep coming back to find your way in a larger, more intimidating space. Does anybody want to share any more about that experience? And it's fine if not. Abby or anybody else, do you want anything about challenges or about what's working right now that folks want to share? Anything you noticed?
Sorry, I was putting in a link for Donut. It's called Donut, yes, Deborah. I put the link in the notes. Yeah, I think I did want to ask Kimani. I think you put in the chat, passing through what we think are great ideas, moving into the future into a rigid system of governance, ideas, IP rights, and all governance, meeting organizational. Did you want to expand on what you meant by that? I don't think I fully understand. Kimani, you're muted.
Hi.
Hi, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No. What I mean by that is when you're working on a project where a good chunk of your work needs to go online, and you feel like somehow there are sort of bureaucracies within organizations that are forcing you or maybe slowing down. So how I would want to put out to the community that we live in a country that we mostly rely on largely Western apps, and we're thinking that how do we focus our conversations within our communities and trying to build a different conversation that's going to build into the future, despite COVID-19 and the shutdowns that are likely to happen in a few more days. So my concern, or maybe one thing that I'd want to put out to everyone is how would you go around such bureaucracies? Because people may have ideas that can really propel, but somehow things are putting them back. Speaking around civil society organizations, speaking around government, speaking around, the laws that we have. So
Yeah.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. I tried to capture more of your comment in the notes. I see Brooke unmuted. Do you have a quick comment before we move on?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to sort of +1 Kimani's sort of challenges. I work for a municipality. And so like some of these tools, just even getting the permission to use Zoom was such an uphill battle. And then we've been given it, but a lot of the features are locked down because of various open meeting laws or public records laws. And so I think definitely feeling that challenge of like a desire to be nimble and responsive in the face of all of this, and a bureaucracy that is not nimble.
Yeah, I think that's a common concern. So if anyone has any insights or thoughts on how to handle that, please put it in the notes.
Good. That sounds like a process workshop / series of sessions to me as well. And I think might also be a really generative question over on the Slack. I know we have a lot of civil society groups that are interested in exactly these kinds of things. We do need to move on, but we'll be able to come back to many of these questions and ideas and a lot of the challenges which are around like media literacy, communications literacy. What do we do now in place of that face-to-face interaction that isn't face-to-face anymore? It might be different. What is it? Great issues to grapple with and to share our struggles with and our solutions with each other. And working towards all that, let's turn things over to Abby, who's going to take us through thinking about how to practice community management online.
Awesome, thanks, Chad. So there's 3 parts to this section. First, we'll do very quickly around messaging during COVID-19. Then we'll talk about the mountain of engagement as a framework. And then Francesca's going to come and talk to us a bit about a case study and how her team has been handling this, which will be really interesting. So first, really quickly on messaging during COVID-19, taking some lessons from crisis communication, there's this quote I really like from Napoleon. It's a leader's job is to paint reality and give hope. It's this idea of having like a realistic hope going forward, not a naive hope. So when a crisis is happening, do be factual, be honest and transparent. That's the best way to build trust and have people want to follow you. Do offer that hope, offer a rational basis for persisting or for doing this work. And then I think most importantly is have empathy. I know we've been seeing a lot of the same opening emails, like, I hope you're well, I hope you're healthy, stay safe. But I think that is really important nowadays, just to be empathetic and also be really understanding when people, like when your volunteers drop out or people have to do other things, there's a lot going on, be okay with that. So just those 3 points, I hope that helps as you're thinking through messaging this time. I do want to spend majority of this time in this mountain of engagement. There are slides linked there if you're a visual learner. It's literally a triangle, so you can just imagine that in your mind as a mountain. But if you want to follow along the slides, they're there. But the big idea is that for any sustainable community, you need 2 main things. You need new people coming into the community and a way for existing members to sort of level up within the community. If you're missing either one of those, over time, your community will lack leadership or will like die out eventually. So if you want something sustainable over time, you need those 2 things. So we're going to talk about how to bring people into like that bottom of the mountain and then move them up through the mountain. So that was slide 2. So slide 3, these are all the different levels in the mountain that we talk about. So first is discovery at the very bottom. How do people first hear about your project or your group or your movement? How do they contact you? They might join a mailing list, might join your Slack. Participation is next. They might join a webinar, make some issues on GitHub, start emailing on your list. From participation, there's sustained participation. They keep coming back to webinars, they keep discussing. After that, there's networked participation, which I think is really important. It's when they start bringing others into the community, or they start helping onboarding other newcomers up that mountain. And then finally, leadership. I do think network participation is a kind of leadership, but for leadership, are they like helping facilitate a session? Are they leading the entire movement? That could be a whole range of things. Sorry if I'm going fast. It's a really packed call today. So if we go to slide 4, we're going to go through each of these steps and talk about some best practices and how to do this in an online setting. So for discovery, really to get people from not knowing about your project to hearing about it, that's a lot of times it's promotion. And that's very specific to your community, depending on your community. So this might be emails, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It depends on who you're trying to reach. But I think some best practices is having some sort of public repository, either a website or if it's a code project, have this online on GitHub somewhere. And then having it licensed openly so that people know that they have permission to use what you've put out there and to share it if you can. So those are things for best practices for discovery. Then to get from discovery, first they hear about your project, now they want to contact you. A couple of best practices, have that clear vision and mission. If someone comes to your website and it doesn't make any sense, they're a lot less likely to reach out. So make sure you've really solidified what it is you're doing and that mission, and making sure that's like first and foremost there. That makes it much more likely people will come and reach you. Also having like multiple communication channels. I've noticed some places they'll say, hey, if you're interested in getting involved, email me. But that's quite a barrier compared to like, join this chat session, or here's our discourse, or here's like somewhere you can lurk for a while. So try to have multiple channels where people can like easily get involved. Yeah, that makes it a little easier for people to do that first contact piece. And I think related to that mission vision, having like a good README or landing page that really describes what you're doing and what you're all about makes a big difference, and people will want to contact you. Now, from that first contact to actually participating, something that's really interesting from volunteerism research, a personal invitation makes someone 4 times more likely to volunteer than otherwise. So if there's someone in your community that you really think should be coming to a session or doing something, just personally ask them. It makes a huge difference. Related to that in open source is the idea of requests for contribution. So just like asking people to contribute or asking people to do stuff, that also makes a big difference. And then on the flip side of that, so you ask people, but you also need to set those expectations. Like, what does it mean to participate in the community? So these can be things like the code of conduct, contributing guidelines, or even just documents saying like, for these calls, it's 1 hour a week for 4 weeks. you can come and go as you please. Just saying like, what does it mean to be part of this community? What are we expecting of you? Oh, so fast, it's lots to do. Okay, from participation to sustained participation. How do you get people to keep coming back? Oh, we're on slide 7 now. I kept forgetting to say slide numbers, but that's like recognition. It's a big one. So saying thank you to people, adding people to like your contributors page, having that sort of ritual of gratitude that Chad's been talking about the past few weeks makes a big difference. It makes people feel like they're valued and want to come back. You can connect the work that they're doing to the mission, especially if they joined because they care about the mission. Just showing them that like what you've done will really help us get to our main goal makes a big difference. And then getting to know them and understanding what it is they want to do and what it is they're interested in. So if you have someone that's like really interested in technical writing, but then you give them a job somewhere else, they're less likely to stay involved. So like try to match them properly. From sustained participation to network participation, I think this is the trickiest one, but like the most important. And I listed a couple of things that are helpful here. Things like mentorship and training. If people are actually finding value in being part of this community, they're a lot more likely to bring others along and to help others. And we found with the mentorship program that built in like this idea that they were mentoring others up the community. So then they were automatically part of that networked participation group. And then things like professional development makes a big difference. So if you can offer things like certificates or just some place people can say that like, oh, I learned something or volunteered somewhere, that makes a huge difference. And then finally, leadership. I do think you should have a personal invitation to bring someone into a leadership role, set those clear expectations again. They're different for leaders than they are for participants often. And really making sure that value exchange is there so that you're not just using free labor, but that they're actually getting something out of being in this community. So make sure it's like an equitable exchange. There is this inclusive leadership cycle that I really enjoy. And I think Emma Irwin snuck into the call. And I know she did a lot of work in that inclusive leadership cycle. And I really like that cycle. And it's a big takeaway for me there is how you don't just throw someone into leadership and then leave them there forever. That's not really best practice, but having parts where they're onboarded, where you review their work, where you can renew them to become leaders again. And that way, I know I've been asked to be like a maintainer for a project, and then I've become the worst maintainer in the world because I forgot about it. But this way, making sure it's time bound and those expectations are there and you keep renewing that makes a big difference. So that was super fast. I do want to make sure we have enough time for Francesca to share. So I'm going to move on to Francesca with a bit of a case study and some platforms.
Hi, hello. I'm going to share some slides, but feel free to interrupt me if you want to ask anything. Just 1 second. There, can you see it? Let me know when they are up.
They're there now, thanks.
Okay, so hi. So my name is Francesca. I work in the Mozilla community development team. And here I want just to talk a bit about our team dealt with the COVID crisis and how we kept our community, how we tried to keep at least our community engaged during this time. So just a background, the Mozilla community is pretty spread out throughout the globe. So obviously the situation for each community was different at different times. So that's one of the things we had to adapt to, that we had to adapt to the situation of each community each volunteer was in. But we try to make our call to make it easy for our community to stay connected and engaged, and also to be connected to each other, not just to us or to the mission. Okay, so I want to focus in 2 areas on which we also focused, which was communication inside the community, also between us, the community, and call to action. So giving people things to do that were related to the crisis. So but what concerned communication, we had 2 main ways of communication. These were instruments we already had. We did not create that. So just use them. during this crisis. So one is a synchronous way of communication. We use Matrix, and that is good for chat, for connection with the community, even for bantering with people to have a sense of community. And another one is a synchronous way of communication, which is Discourse, and we use it more for updates, news, and to dig more deeply, for example, in certain topics. So this is what the matrix looks like. There are different rooms. So one thing that was really important for us that Mozilla has its own instance of matrix, so we can enforce our code of conduct throughout our rooms. And I think that's very important, especially in a situation in which people are already at the present, that is a place that is in a way we can try to maintain safe for people. And also we thought another thing was important was discoverability, that people can find rooms where they can talk about the things that interest them. So in relation to the things that we did was to create a specific channel where people could go and spoke about the crisis. They could tell to each other what's going on in your country, how are you feeling? And that was a way for people to communicate on that when they wish to communicate on that, but also in a way to say, oh, there is a place where you can talk about them, but also in a way to have some other channels where they could speak about also other things. So not to get overwhelmed about it. Other things use specific messages to give specific information about what was happening inside our team, inside Mozilla, to the community, especially our core contributors that were interested in that. We use Discourse, where we can say specific things and then people can respond to it. So what concerned the call to actions, things that some of our volunteers were telling, and we were seeing that some people had more times at home, and that they wanted a way to stay engaged, and also to stay connected with the community, even online, even not in person. And so we thought that we wanted to give them a way to be engaged that was still connected to what was happening. So one of the things we did was organize this campaign, which we asked, well, what are the instruments that you are using in this time to communicate, or what's an instrument used for homeschooling, to stay in contact with each other during this time? Then we asked them, are they working well on Firefox? And please submit backs about it. So this was one of the things we did. So what we've learned about it, we learned, obviously, as I already mentioned, the conditions are different around the globe. In moments where certain countries were already in lockdown, events were still happening in other parts of the globe. In other parts of the globe, some countries are reopening, some other countries are going to lockdown. So we want our volunteers to follow, obviously, the local guidelines, and we want to adapt to what's going on in their own countries. And other things we learned is about the importance of keep the momentum going. So, for example, when we were able to roll out our campaign, a few weeks had passed, obviously, because it takes some time to set up a campaign, and we find that we did not find as enthusiastic a response we expected, and we think it's because in a way people adapted to these new normals, and we already found tools they could use. So we learned it was important to keep the momentum going. And then another things we thought that was important is making it as easy as possible for people to contribute. And for example, we tried to help people by giving them advice on how to carry out online events. So making some tools available to communicate for the community. For example, video conferencing tools that they needed to have their own meetings, internal meetings, for example, for some communities that they ask them, they ask us to provide, to help them with those tools. And sharing practices that work, not just us telling people this work, but asking them what is working for you and ask them to share. So at least we can talk about what is working, what we can do. And then empathy. We don't want to push volunteer in a moment in which many people are in difficult situation, and even be open to speak, especially one-on-one if someone reaches out to you. So these are the things that we found that work. And I think I might have gone a bit over time, so I will stop here.
Thanks so much, Francesca. And it's nice to hear how your team has been going through this. Sorry, Chad, were you saying something?
Just thank you.
To make for the time, that was perfect timing, Francesca. So what we're going to do for Q&A, we have a spot where you can type your questions in. And instead of asking them verbally, Francesca and I will type our answers in during your breakout room. That way you'll have all the answers here afterwards. But if you have any questions around, Francesca's implementation or more about the Mountain of Engagement, there's a room right here to type your questions. And Chad.
Yes. And going forward from those topics and our conversations earlier, we'll head into breakout rooms. And just remind everyone of our asks that we really listen and express gratitude from our own experiences without judging or trying to solutioneer each thing that might come up. Use that common denominator of kindness, and of course, I'll only share the things you're comfortable sharing. Should you need help, there'll be a help button at the bottom of your breakout room window. You can press that, and either Abby or I will show up to everyone some help. Today, please do say hello and introduce yourself if you wind up in a breakout room with any new friends. And then we have 3 prompts. The first is, how could you apply something like the Mountain Engagement to your own community work right now? The second, just ask you to share, what are some of the new community management tools or approaches or methods that you're learning right now? And are there any that you kind of like already feel you want to carry forward with you into the future? Even after the immediate crisis passes. And then finally, what are your plans right now for staying connected with your new allies and community members? So those are the prompts. How could you use something like the Mountain of Engagement? What approaches are you learning right now that you definitely want to carry with you into the future? And how are you planning to stay connected with your new allies, your new community members, your newcomers? Are there any questions about those prompts? All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and Abby will send you in your breakout rooms, and we'll come back here together in 15 minutes. Here we go. All right.
Welcome back, everyone.
Yes. Abby, you're going to take us into shared insights?
Yeah, so I thought we'd take a few minutes just to document what came up in your group, any big ideas, takeaways, or even any questions that came up for the rest of the group. We'll give you, this says 10 minutes. We do not have 10 minutes. We'll give you a few minutes to write down your thoughts, and then we'll spend some time to verbalize. Oh, tons of discussion still happening. Now's a good time to go through and add your +1s. If you haven't done that yet. Cool. Does anyone want to verbalize something? I am really enjoying this discussion happening around not everyone in your community needs to be super excited about every engagement opportunity. I think that's very true.
I mean, I take heart that this is a Mozilla call. People who are famous for community engagement and pulling community together, and there are, you know, what, 13 people here? So that's okay. It doesn't have to be 75 people every single call. 4 or 13 is totally fine.
For sure. And I feel like you get a better conversation at 13 than you would at 75. That's why we offer this call 4 times. Emma, were you going to say something?
I was. I was quite inspired, and I'm forgetting your name. Brooke, I think it was talking about how normally she would, or they would go into the communities where they were trying to build community versus having them come to their area, like as an inclusion. I hope I'm representing that right, but it reminded me that, you know, like we really need to think about all the different ways that people can connect and communicate, from like the issue of bandwidth, right? Like some tools are just really heavy, from introverts, video, and people, childcare, people who are in large apartment buildings at dinner time who have no Wi-Fi. Like there's so many kind of different considerations for connecting people that actually I felt was like this nice bridge to think about how we do that in person. What does it mean to do that online as well? So I was just inspired. I have no like specific thing to say about it other than that really made me have an aha moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Also, Deborah, I'm not sure if you meant to put this in chat just for me, but I think it's an important comment. Like sometimes a small group is just as effective as a large group. And there's a haha, Jesus had 12 disciples. But I will say oftentimes it's better long-term to invest deeply in a small group than to reach 1,000 people in an hour. It's more transformative and it helps you longer term. So I do like that. Okay, Chad, 3 minutes to close us off. Oh, you're still typing. Sorry, Chad.
Oh goodness, I was typing, but I'll go back to that. How am I going to remember? All right, bottom page 8. Good. Yes, welcome to Closing Circle. Wow, what amazing shares. There's so many conversations happening there. So rich. I hope that folks will continue to come back to these things with people here on the call, people maybe in the Slack community across calls, and of course with the folks in your own communities and networks. Thank you for making this experience what it was, which was just this really robust and comforting time to come together and acknowledge challenges and also acknowledge that we are not alone in facing them. I do want to remind you that, as usual, we have a 2 to 3 minute survey we would love for you to complete. This one is really going to help us understand what maybe is most valuable from this series of calls that we can carry forward into the kinds of programming that we're doing next, and into the ways we support people approaching MozFest 2021. This is also your chance, though, to let us know if you would be interested in a special bonus episode that takes a behind-the-scenes look at how we design calls like these. So if you're curious about how we decide on agendas, facilitation styles, work distribution, things like that, registration, the nitty-gritty, the big stuff, the ideas, whatever it is, please go to that survey and tell us that that is of interest to you, and then we can carry that forward in our internal discussions. If you have shares and shout outs, please put them in there. This again is your opportunity to give thanks and to show gratitude for the amazing people that you want to lift up from your community who are making a big difference right now. Underneath that is an area where you can list your requests for peer assists should you need a contributor, a thought partner, buddies for a book club coming out of this series of calls. We have 5 ways to stay involved with Mozilla. Please do stay tuned. You just been invaluable in helping us think about all these topics together. We'd love to stay connected with each other and to find each other again in future opportunities to talk, to think, to collaborate, to convene eventually, face-to-face even. And then finally, we have our shared resources this week. I'm going to highlight this one at the bottom. Towards the bottom, media-based organizing and collective care newsletter sign up from Allied Media Projects. What a great newsletter. Really discreet, helpful, well-labeled sections, everything from pleasure activism to mutual aid to finding funders to giving funds away. Just a really helpful publication whenever it comes out. Suggest that sign up right there. And again, a second reminder for our feedback survey. With that, I'm going to say thank you. Abby, any last words?
It was such a pleasure to meet with this group. I know this group, it's one of the smaller groups of the week, so it's been so nice to actually get to know some of you rather than just seeing anonymous faces. So that's been great.
Awesome.
That was my last words.
Fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording after a few goodbyes. We'll capture a few of those, and then everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.